Peace, everybody. What's up? Ken Swift over here, Break Life University, LA, in the study. Coming off of a really nice spring of classes here in California, and now getting ready for summer and fall. So just wanted to touch base. I'm having more time now to really build on speaking more about breaking. And today I'd like to talk about 8-ball footwork. I was recently at an event in March, I think it was April, and in topic and just discussion with some cats that I know for years. One of them was like, I wanted to talk to you about 8-ball footwork. And I was like, okay, cool. And he actually, moved stuff around. He's like, I want to show you what I think, and he broke down his interpretation of what he thought it was. And I was like, cool, when the smoke clears, it's about the way you interpret movement. But at the same time, 8-ball footwork is something specific to my journey. I'm talking about when I first learned footwork, I really understood it circularly and wanted to explore it more. Circular motion, the first style being that rapid fire, quick twisting style. And it was just hard. Footwork at that time was, you could have a move, you could have a freeze, you could do your gestures and postures and stuff, but footwork was just raw. And when I was very young, my first year, that's what you had to have. Moves come, people get moves and do their own quote unquote signature stuff. But footwork was just, there was a freedom to it, but you had to be nasty with footwork. So footwork at that time was raw, and you had to have the ability to really kind of stand out with not just your the flow you have with your footwork, but that raw edge, because it was just something that was different from what I'd seen before. So I was intrigued. Like most people that come into this dance are like, yo, that's bugged out. I leaned more towards, being creative, and biting was a big deal. You didn't really want to look like somebody, and you wanted to bring something to every circle to really get recognized in your own way and just build your skills up and build your props. And in the 70s, I was into the Olympics and sports, me and my brothers, and we used to watch the Olympics all the time. Winter, summer, whatever it was a big deal in the household. We put the TV on for that time period, and vote, go USA, all that good stuff. But I remember in the Winter Olympics, they had the ice skating competition, and just took a couple of notes on that real quick. I remember seeing the figure eight type of part of, the ice skating championships, and it was, the ice skater had to do this perfect figure eight in their ice skates, and, it was just something interesting and different. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of hard to do, you're on these thin blades and stuff. But, for some reason, I thought about that when I started thinking about circular motion with footwork. And I was like, well, we go counterclockwise and clockwise. We can twist it really fast, or we can control it and face it in one direction, circular footwork patterns in motion. And I just wanted to be different with it. And when I started putting it together, I was thinking about circular sweeps because it just made sense because they're circular. But the original approach to the 8-ball concept that I came up with, it couldn't really work that perfectly. So it's actually, the original 8-ball footwork is a freestyle with shuffling motions, sweeps, and around the worlds spins that would complete the full figure eight. So we're going forwards, we're going backwards, we're twisting, and it's a freestyle type of thing in a sense. But ultimately, I knew that I was creating this type of way of moving that was a little bit different. And they call it figure eight. I was like, I like this. I feel like it's different. I want to call it the 8-ball, because the 8-ball just sounded more hard, a little bit more hardcore. So basically in the 70s, figure skating at the Olympics, they had included compulsory figures where they would trace geometric patterns on the ice, such as figure eight, the figure eight with precision. So this is kind of like, the inspiration. So, at a young age, I was just trying to be creative, and that's how it all came about. Now I've seen people talk about 8-ball footwork, and, in in the 80s, when I came up with this and came up with this name for this concept and this way of breaking, it was what it was. I didn't expand on it too much. It wasn't until the 90s where I started taking another look at all the stuff I had done in the 80s and, in my first years of breaking, and trying to expand on them, because it was a new level of breaking. There was new dancers, and, the moves were, in the 90s, everything just escalated. Mid 80s to 90s worldwide, people just got more involved, and it blew up harder. Maybe not in New York and some of the states, but just everybody caught on to it, and so me, peeking back into the scene with friends and stuff, I was like, wow, man, everything is looking futuristic. How can I exist? How can I survive in this scene? So I was just looking at a lot of my old concepts. And so I pulled back the 8-ball, and I said, well, let me restructure this. And I was really focusing, in like 93, 94, I started really coming really mentally and physically together. I think everything was working on both levels. To me, it's totally mental half of the time, but physical part of it is very, very necessary. And I think the mental side is what really gives you that edge, when you can really have the ability to be in touch with your body and the way you move, and that type of control and confidence. So I started really looking at it through the pivot. I emphasize the pivot off the ball of the foot, like a boxer, or, like if you jump in rope or something like that, as that spring or that boing, that bouncy kind of way of moving, that I remember with, different B-boys, mostly Frosty Freeze, because he had that thing, and he was really good at flipping, and he just bounced around, and it just fit him in the way he moved perfectly. So I wanted to take that pivot with control, because now we're moving footwork side to side. Now let's just make it clear. I've heard people talk about 8-ball and seen some of the videos, and I think it's a little off. And some people, they mention Ken Swift, and, and there's people that have heard stories, and it's like, to me, that's fine. But ultimately it's people are breaking it down in a different way, so it's more personal to them, and that's the reason why I wanted to share this, because it does have a history in its own beginning, in a way, and it comes from that creative, youthful energy, and just this imaginary way of approaching using your body through footwork and through dance. So the 8 actual is an 8. So it's not it's a number 8. If you're looking at an 8, you're not looking at it sideways. People are flipping the delivery of the people that are showing it. It's unique to what they think, but it's not 8-ball footwork. 8-ball footwork is approaching in that forward direction, creating the 8. It's not going side to side as an 8. So that that has to be mentioned first. But then at the same time, in the 90s, when I was rocking that style of that single right sweep, twist, pivot, single left sweep, twist, pivot, to create that 8, it had this dope flow to it that I really liked, and it was fluid, and it was controlled, and it wasn't like I stayed doing that for 15 seconds. Like, I would shoot it in between movements and combinations. I would just let it ride, and sometimes it would come off, just out of going off the top sometimes, and just, a lot of that was what I did. I put together combinations, but the music always played the key in how I would rock the timing on these particular combinations that I made up, and how I would, stop them and move them. And so making up a combination, I could do that. We can all do that. But ultimately, the way the music would affect me in that time, with that energy and that hype, this is when the magic happens, when you're doing things when you didn't really structure them in a specific way, but you're just going with the music. And the times that I let go and didn't think about, the pressure of being somewhere trying to do something right or wrong, when I let go and I let the music really just take me, everything was like magic. And I'd see it later and be like, wow, that was kind of dope. And I usually didn't like looking at myself on videos, because a lot of stuff I didn't like what I was doing. So the 8-ball footwork is a concept, and it is something that people speak about, and I'm happy about that, and I think the best example from explaining this is really enjoying that creative process, which is not easy. In 2025, it's like, we got, 5 decades of dance with breaking, and, it's not easy to be innovative / creative but you know, you can have fun with it, and it's infinite in a sense, you know, with me. I've always said footwork is infinite, especially when the numbers started coming into it more. I was like, well, you know, if you want to call something a 5-step, you can have a 16-step, you can make a 50-step, you know, like it's all just about choreographing and putting together steps, which ultimately isn't the essence of footwork. Footwork is just raw and sporadic. I don't think people are really, you know, trying to really stop each step in time to make it what it became and what it would be. But over time, yeah, I mean, we did want to be creative, so more people started making up techniques and their own interpretations of the 60 styles of footwork and all this other stuff, which is allowed. That's allowed. That's what we're all supposed to do. So ultimately, that's the lesson. Yeah, you know, 8-ball footwork is a traditional thing. This comes from a very youthful inspiration through music and also being a part of a brand new scene I was in, and I wanted to be nasty with it. And these are some of the kind of things that my mind, the directions our minds, a lot of us at that time would go to be creative. So 8-ball footwork, once again, 81, I would say 82. Just a really cool thing that stood the test of time. So, you know, people out there learning it, take the message, take the idea of being creative with what you see around you. I wrote something here earlier that I just wanted to also share. And it kind of brings it to speed. And what I wrote was, footwork was a big deal when I started. You just had to have good footwork. I understood raw, circular, rapid fire delivery, but started paying attention to circular motion and shapes more. And I looked at the idea of circles and shapes and then using my vision of the shape in a breaking footwork perspective. I wanted to be creative and different. Okay, so within that, we have the content, we have, you know, things that you could do with your body, you know, that were inside of footwork. You know, some people call them different things regionally. Some people say switches, CCs, helicopters, shuffles, kickouts. There's so much different terminologies depending on where you were from. But ultimately, you had those tools, and how would you be creative? So that's where it's at. So when you come into breaking, you learn your footwork, get your footwork down. It's the last remaining true visual element of the art of breaking, in my opinion. You take footwork out of the equation, it's not breaking anymore. It becomes everything that it has inspired from, mostly since its inception. When we talk about gymnastics, acrobatics, kung fu, we talk about capoeira, we talk about all these things, contortion, cartoons, we talk about all these inspirations in our worlds at young ages, or whatever age you're in. And this is the evolution of the art, but it starts from that raw circular motion. And every b-boy and b-girl should have dope footwork when it comes to the art of breaking. So peace to everybody out there doing the homework, doing the research, and keep it up. And yeah, man, keep those videos going, sharing your influences and inspiring people with this art. Thanks and peace.